Today, we are launching a campaign called He for She. I am reaching out to you because we need your help. We want to end gender inequality, and to do this, we need everyone involved. This is the first campaign of its kind at the UN. We want to try and galvanize as many men and boys as possible to be advocates for change. And we don't just want to talk about it. We want to try and make sure that it's tangible.
Gender equality has become much like a piece of religious dogma, and I would go as far to say that it is a piece of religious dogma, although the religion in question promoting and propagating it could only really be referred to as the fundamentalist religion of gynocentrism. The church of the fundamentalist religion of gynocentrism, being feminism, has been pushing this notion since its very inception during the first wave. However, although it sounds innocent, benign, and in fact positive on the surface, there is, however, a fundamental flaw within the notion of gender equality, and a fundamental fault that is too often ignored. In order to make things a little bit easier for the viewers, I'm going to go ahead and try to define equality, and I must warn you that my definition may be perhaps a little bit idealistic, potentially outdated, and maybe even outright farcical. To me, the definition of equality is that two people, no matter who or where they come from, no matter their nationality, identity, religion, or political beliefs, should and ought to stand on an equal playing field, economically, politically, and socially. In short, two individuals should have the same rights as the other individual, and should also be required to assume the same responsibility for their actions and simultaneously enjoy the same privileges. This, to me, is the only respectable definition of equality. It is the only one I can care less about, and it is a very positive attitude and, in my view, a good idea. It is really a fair, concept from which to govern the lives of individuals within our society. All should have a chance, and all should play on an even playing field. On 1972, there was a push, in essence, an amendment that essentially consists of the following. Section 1. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on the account of sex. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Section 3. This amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. The Equal Rights Amendment, or what I've just read, was in essence the referendum on the notion of gender equality. Now, as it stands today, the ERA has had its ratification deadline removed, in essence allowing it to be passed even to this day. But what's most important to remember about the Equal Rights Amendment is that this probably is the greatest move to real, tangible equality that has ever been pushed on the part of the feminist movement or by government, whatsoever. It's something that passed Congress and even passed the Senate, and was more or less approved pretty much 0 to 1. Now, what's most interesting is that this amendment was shot down by a group of people you would not expect to, of course, shot it down. And this little particular clip that I'm about to show you on the Equal Rights Amendment back in the day is most telling, and I would encourage you to pay very careful attention to the statements made by one Phyllis Shapley.
The proposed constitutional amendment, passed overwhelmingly by the Senate and the House, holds that, quote, equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. That doesn't sound particularly subversive, and I would therefore like to begin by asking Mrs. Schlafly to state her principal objection to ERA.
Well, it's the very innocuous wording of the amendment that is the reason why many people didn't realize in the beginning what unfortunate consequences it would have. But fortunately, the amending process calls for a full-blown debate in the state legislatures around the country, and this is where we find out some of the things that were not originally realized by many people who voted for it. We find, as we look into the matter, that ERA won't give women anything which they haven't already got or have a way of getting. But on the other hand, it will take away from women some of the most important rights and benefits and exemptions we now have.
What would be an example of that?
Well, a great glaring example on which there's full agreement between both the proponents and the opponents is the matter of the draft. Women are exempt from the draft. Selective service says only young men of age 18 have to register. But the Equal Rights Amendment will positively make women subject to the draft and on an equal basis with men. Nor could you have a system whereby the women would get all the nice, easy desk jobs and the men get all the fighting jobs. It would have to be equal across the board, in combat, on warships, and all up and down the line.
I'm going to replay this clip. However, I'm only going to play the important part, and the one that is most telling.
We find, as we look into the matter, that ERA won't give women anything which they haven't already got or have a way of getting. But on the other hand, it will take away from women some of the most important rights and benefits and exemptions we now have.
The Equal Rights Amendment is, for all intents and purposes, the personification of equality. It is the simple notion that government shall not discriminate. And when it comes down to it, the American womenfolk are not the beneficiaries of this particular amendment. They will not be the ones seeing the lion's share of the benefits, because at the end of the day, this particular amendment opens the door for a lot of things that the MRM could indeed perhaps go after. It would make, in effect, as Phyllis Shapley said, the draft illegal. It would make affirmative action illegal. It could potentially make things like alimony illegal on the grounds that they are discriminatory by nature. Since, generally speaking, men earn more money than the womenfolk, alimony could perhaps be considered illegal under the Equal Rights Amendment. The thing is, the door really opens up if the Equal Rights Amendment were in fact to be amended into law. And as Phyllis Shapley said, the individual American woman is not the beneficiary. Under the Equal Rights Amendment, gone will be the days where the modern woman can retain the privileges of her grandmother. To put it even simpler, under the Equal Rights Amendment, gone will be the failures of feminism. The first being the right to vote without service. That will be gone forever. Because under the Equal Rights Amendment, as Phyllis Shapley said, their exemptions from the draft will be removed. And they will be held to account by law for the decisions they make at the ballot. And potentially also, gone will be no-fault divorce with the addition of alimony and the division of assets. They will retain the rights that they have today, but lose the privileges of the past. And when you really think about that, no woman benefits from that. And this is where the fundamental failure of equality exists. I put forward the notion that, based on what we've spoken about, that equality is a lie. It is at best misguided, and at worst a hideous and persistent form of manipulation, because at the end of the day it would require that women act against their own interests, that they strip themselves of the enormous privileges that they have acquired over these, the centuries, and that they work against themselves. And I just do not see this happening, because women may be many things, but stupid isn't one of them. To put it simply, and to summarize this entire video, until such time as the proponents of the theory of gender equality can produce substantive evidence that women will in fact work against their own interests in a significant enough number from which something like the Equal Rights Amendment can be passed, this theory should be openly challenged, and its proponents should be mocked until such time as they provide this evidence. And men everywhere should use this particular interview as ammunition, because it is really, really telling. It is really, really powerful, because it just proves this entire concept to be crap. You know, the Equal Rights Amendment was the referendum on the notion of gender equality, and the referendum failed. It was voted on. It was debated. And it lost. Not by men. Not by these angry, misogynistic things with beards, twirling their moustaches, wearing fedoras, but by the individual women. By a collection of them coming together and unanimously striking down this particular piece of legislation, or I should say this amendment, and, of course, this referendum. They voted no. The people who supposedly would benefit from this piece of legislation, or I should say amendment, voted it down. Anyone who tries to push this theory, show them this video. I mean, I can't think of anything more really powerful than the statements by Phyllis Shapley. When it comes down to it, I think she says it perfectly. They don't benefit. And at the end of the day, this doesn't work in their interests. When you take that, and you consider the fact that they're just not going to work against themselves, there's just no hope for this entire notion of equality. It's crap. And for that reason, there's nothing more I can say. It's crap. It's a bullshit notion put forward by activists to basically jerk off the rather foolish public. And that's really all there is to it. It's just words without meaning. It's nothing more. And I encourage MGTOW especially to take this particular this particular video and start sharing it with people. Start looking at it and start, educating other men about this, because equality really is a farce, and this entire notion has been pushed so hard and for so long that it needs to die. It's like the gender wage gap, but this is far more pernicious. That's all. Goodbye.